This video will show you how to organize data in order to make a graph out of raw data that you've collected in a survey of 2 questions. So if you're still collecting data, keep doing it. This video won't help you out until you're done with it. Once you're done collecting all the data, I'm going to ask you to organize it, if it's not already organized, into a Google spreadsheet that looks like this. So it's going to have 3 columns. I color-coded mine, so it was easier to talk about, but basically it's the initials, the independent variable, and the dependent variable. So when you start, it might look like this: your initials, what is your independent variable? This will be on your x-axis, and your dependent variable, which will be on your y-axis eventually. So we have this complete. The students, I'm using a student sample from a couple years ago, and we are going to use this to do step 3. So what step 3 is it involves wrapping the text, inserting a filter, and ordering the x-axis data, or your independent variable data, from A to Z. So let's look and see what that looks like. First thing we want to do when we work with data is we want to wrap the text. So we're going to press Format, or first select all the cells. I click this to select the cells, Format, and then Wrap Text. That lets me see all the questions. Next thing I want to do is be able to insert a filter. And we're going to go to Data, define our filter after I've highlighted the first row, filter the data. And lastly, I'm going to sort A to Z. So I have all my X data in order 1 to 5. It's really important that you don't put any text right now in these cells. It should just be numerical, because we're going to use the numbers in a minute. Just now we wrapped text, inserted filter, and ordered A to Z. We're now going to create a frequency chart. We're going to be moving over the headings to make that frequency chart. So what that looks like is I literally take these 2 cells and move them over so I'm able to view a new table that's going to turn into my table to graph. Next, I'm going to select text and average all the responses for each X value response. So in other words, I'm going to, from the order that they're in, average the responding numbers. So my number 1 response, I accidentally moved it and I took it over. I didn't mean to do that. I still want it to be there. I'm just going to Control C. My number 1 response only had 1 person who responded a 5. They said they spend 1 hour of time on the internet and they feel 5. Very happy. So their response is 5. We don't have to average it because there's not more than 1. Later we can talk about sample data. We'd probably, if we wanted to make a true science project, collect more data, so we'd have at least 3 or 4 people that had responded that. The same is true for 2 as it is for 1. If I'm finding the average of 1 number, it's always going to be that 1 number. So if this person, AR, spent 2 hours on the internet, they felt an average contentness of 5. Okay, so now this is where it gets fun. You have multiple responses for 3 people that felt moderately happy. 1, 2, 3, 4. And what we're trying to do right now is get the average response of their happiness. So they spent, so this is how many hours they spent. So they spent an average of 3 hours, and we're trying to get how happy they were. So you see I've looked at all the 3s and then found their responses. I haven't included the 3s because that's telling me what I want to figure out. I then am going to go to the box at the bottom that has a little function, and it's either average, minimizing, sum. Today I need the average. The average of 3, I just found out, was 4. I'm going to show you again how I did that. I found all of the answers that were 3, and then I picked the boxes in the Y column and averaged them. The average is 4. You could also do it on a calculator, but I like this little button better. Let's see what the average happiness is for the people that say they spend 4 hours on the internet. Now, some people accidentally at this point average the 4, which is an easy mistake to make. So if you ever end up with a really clean line or the same number as your other one, the average is 4, but I'm not collecting the average of the X column. I'm collecting the average of the Y column. So let's get that. Looks like the average of the 4 responses are 3.3. And then we have 5. Okay, we got 4 5s. The average of the 5 is 3.25. For the 6s, the average is 4.5. And for the 7, it's just 1, so the average is 5. This is now graphable. I would create this data into a tails graph on paper next. The next step is to create a graph on paper in order to make sure that we know what we want our graph to look like. So I'm going to stop the video here. I'd like you to get out a piece of graph paper and graph your data. Thanks for listening.